Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie. I'm sorry, I haven't talked at all this morning. I have a busy day ahead of me because I've decided to read the first chapter of 10 new books that I have. As I stated in the last try a chapter video that I did, which I will link below. I feel like a dirty car salesman, I'm sorry. I love starting books. If I could only ever start books and never finish them, I would do it. And you know what? I feel like I have done that with the majority of books that I own. And so why not just add 10 more to that? I have a mix here of romance, horror, fantasy, and I have one literary fiction that sounds like it's going to be a little fantasy, so let me show you the books. Let's start with romance. I have two here, Out on a Limb, which I have very high expectations for because everyone's been 5-starring it, and The Worst Best Man. I don't even remember why I bought this, so that'll be a surprise. I have my one literary fiction by Melissa Broder. But this is also sort of fantastical because she goes into a cactus and there's like a world in there. For fantasy, I have 3 here. The Will of the Many, I've been dying to read this, but it's very intimidating, so I figured I'd just start it. One Dark Window, just got this in the mail. Everyone has been talking about this. And then Dreambound, which no one has been talking about. And then I have 4 horror books. I have Monstrilio. This is a 5-star prediction. I fucking cannot wait to devour this. An anthology, Never Whistle at Night, with a bunch of different authors. And I love this cover. Black Sheep. I have not read a Rachel Harrison book yet. I recently purchased Cackle and Such Sharp Teeth, but I feel like people have been raving about this one. So I'll probably just start with it. And then Jawbone. I think this one might be too smart for me, but you know what? I'm gonna try my hardest. So there we go. Those are the 10 books I'm going to start today. And I think to make it easy on myself, I'm just gonna start them in alphabetical order so that I don't have to be like, which one do I start next? All right, I put them in order and I'm starting with Black Sheep. Let's go. Of course, I'm gonna be reading the first sentences of all of these to you because why the fuck not? This is dedicated for the bad kids. Oh my God, I love that. I was not a bad kid. I was literally an angel child, but I did get kicked out of my house at 16, so I don't know. Chapter 1, Sentence 1. As I stood singing the birthday song for the 5th time that evening, I realized I was wrong for not believing in hell. Okay, I finished the first chapter of Black Sheep and I want to keep reading, which is the best sign. Let me tell you the synopsis of this book first. Our main character's name is Vesper, which is a very cool name, and she ended up leaving her house at 18 because it was some like religious cult, and she hasn't talked to any of them since. One day she finds an envelope on her doorstep. Do you say envelope or envelope? Let me know. That's one of those things where every single time I read it, I say it differently. Inside the envelope is an invitation to a wedding of her beloved cousin Rosie. It's hosted at the family farm, and she's kind of shocked because once you leave this place, you're like not invited back. So she's wondering, is this a sweet gesture? Is this an olive branch? Is this a trap? But something tells her to go to the wedding because she used to be really close to this Rosie girl. It says that she'll have to return to this toxic environment that she left, and she'll have to reunite with her mother, who was a former horror film star. When Vesper's homecoming exhumes a terrifying secret, she's forced to reckon with her family's beliefs and her own crisis of faith in these deliciously sinister novel, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so chapter 1. Our main character, Vesper, is working at some bar or like a Buffalo Wild Wings or Chili sort of restaurant, and you can tell based on some of the things that are said that no one really likes her, or at least they're used to her very haughty, grumpy personality. She's serving these guys and one of them grabs her a couple times, which, oh, disgusting. And something happens with the cheese that she gives him. She gives him like some nacho cheese, and after he says something really rude to her, it starts bubbling up and it like blasts in his face. And so I'm thinking, this girl's a witch. Anyway, she gets fired for the incident, which is just so unfair. And as she's heading home, she has this really creepy feeling like someone's watching her, but she ends up finding that envelope and she's wondering who it's from. And so we get a little insight into some of the characters that she grew up with. Rosie, who was like her best friend, practically her sister, or maybe Brody, who is a guy that she used to date. She mentioned him a couple times. It seemed like they were in love, maybe. She opens up the envelope and it's a wedding invitation for Rosie and Brody. And I gasp, okay? Because that is dramatic. That's gonna be drama filled. And our main character is so flabbergasted that her burner in her apartment, like the gas stovetop, starts, you know, creating a flame. So I think she's some sort of, a witch or something. But I'm in this for whatever magical thing is happening. Her mom, she is pretending she doesn't know who she is because one of the guys at the bar is like, oh, do you know who this actress is? And she's like, nope, never heard of her. It's her mother. I really like how it's being written so far, this sort of creepy atmosphere. But I'm not gonna lie, the drama of her best friend and her ex-boyfriend getting married, That kind of has me wanting to read more. All right, next is Death Valley by Melissa Broder. This is the author of Milk Fed and The Pisces, both of which I gave 4.5 stars. And they were such unique books. And I think after reading both of them, I'm just like, did I even like this? And then it takes me a little bit and I'm like, actually, yes, I'm obsessed with this. She's that kind of author that there's just sort of disgusting, unlikable characters, maybe more so in The Pisces. And so I'm expecting some nuanced characters. I'm expecting some beautiful writing. I'm expecting to be weirded out. Let me tell you what this book is about before I get into the first chapter. It's a darkly funny novel about grief that becomes a desert survival story. Our main character flees to the California high desert to escape a cloud of sorrow. Both her father and her husband are in the ICU. She's running from her problems. She stays at this motel and the receptionist suggests to go on this hike, and she goes on the hike. She sees a cactus there with a gash through its side that beckons like a familiar door. She enters it, which is just like, yes! What awaits her within this mystical succulent sets her on a journey at once desolate and rich, hilarious and poignant, and I'm so ready. Also, LOL, this copy that I got, the first 20 pages are just like not attached to the spine at all, but that kind of adds character, don't you think? Let's read the first sentence. I pull into the desert town at sunset feeling empty. Okay, that was a very short chapter. It was only 5 pages, and I think all the chapters in this book are going to be really short, which makes you read it pretty quickly. But damn, I forgot that this is about grief and it's going to be fucking depressing. But then the way that she writes is sort of stream of consciousness, and it's very internalized, so she'll make a statement, or this character will, and then she'll, in parentheses, have a statement about the statement, and I love that type of writing. She said some lines that like, damn, they hit me deep. It's easier to have an intimate relationship with the unconscious than the conscious, the dead than the living. And then she talks about how her father was in this coma. He was in a coma, he woke up, and now he's in another coma. She had this idealized version of him in her head, and she felt like this magical daughter that could fix everything. And then when he woke up, they literally could not look at each other in the eye, and it's so sad. It didn't mention anything about her husband being ill, so I guess that's gonna be more bad news for her to come. Not excited about that. But then listen to this, it's kind of funny. I'm here at the Best Western for a week under the pretext of figuring out the desert section of my next novel. If I'm honest, I came to escape a feeling, an attempt that's already going poorly because unfortunately I brought myself with me, and I see as the last pink light creeps out to infinity that I am still the kind of person who makes another person's coma all about me. And I laughed, but like I want to cry. That's the beauty of Melissa Broder. All right, next is Dreambound by Dan Frey, and this is a book about a father and daughter. I think the main character is the father. His name's Byron, and when his 12-year-old daughter vanishes, the only clue is a note claiming that she's taken off to explore the hidden world, a magical land from a series of popular novels. Apparently, she's not the only child to seek out this imaginary realm in recent years, and Byron, a cynical and hard-nosed reporter, is determined to discover the whereabouts of dozens of missing children. He ends up interviewing the author of this book, and I think he comes to the conclusion that it's actually real. He unearths locations from the book that seem to be bleeding into the real world. He must shed his doubts and dive headfirst into the mystical secrets of Los Angeles if he hopes to reunite with his child. Apparently it's told through journal entries, transcripts, emails, and excerpts, so there's a mixed media element in here, which I can see just flipping through this. All right, let's get into this. The first sentence of chapter 1 is the note that her daughter leaves, or his daughter leaves. Dear Mom and Dad, if you're reading this, I've already left. I'm just gonna keep reading, okay? I'm going to the end of the world and beyond. I won't say anything more because you won't believe me, and I already know what you'll say, Dad. You'll say that I should live more in reality, and Mom, you'll say that I should take deep breaths and not make hasty decisions, but I have no choice. I have to go. Maybe this comes as a surprise to you because you think that on the surface I seem fine, but surfaces can be deceiving. I feel like I'm meant for something more. I'm sorry because I know this will be scary, but I don't belong here. I promise I'll try to come back in the future. Maybe then I can make it better for all of us. Sincerely, Liza. Oh my God, what kind of 12-year-old is writing this letter? I want to cry. Apparently she left this note in between pages 11 and 12 of this fairy tale book. How did they even find that? All right, BRB. Okay, I finished chapter 1, pretty short, 9 pages, and it were 3 different excerpts. And I'm flipping through this, and I don't think there's any like narration. I think it's all excerpts from different things. That is very exciting. Oh my God. Okay, so the first excerpt was the note from the daughter saying that she was running away to this place. The second excerpt was the pages of the book where the note was found, this children's book. And it has to do with this young girl named Sierra who's 12 years old. She goes to a well, she falls in it like Alice in Wonderland, and she goes underwater, she starts swimming towards the light, and she comes out in a lake. She sees some weird like fantasy bird flying that looks at her and then smiles and runs away. And then she sees a tree and it starts talking to her.
Are you Sierra?
The third excerpt in chapter 1 is a police report between the father and a detective. That one I didn't enjoy just because it was very forced dialogue that felt like it was sort of info dumpy and unnatural. But the fact that this entire book is excerpts from emails and articles, there's a Reddit one I just went by, texts, investigative journals, that shit is so exciting to me. And you know what? The story itself, like the fantasy book that this daughter was reading, I wish I could read it because it sounds pretty interesting. Okay, let's move on. Jawbone is next, and I'm nervous about this one. I've seen some rave reviews on this, but it's from people who love dense literary fiction. And so I am a little nervous because I have to be in that mood. Fernanda and Annalise are so close they are practically sisters, a double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up bound on the floor of a deserted cabin, held hostage by one of her teachers and estranged from Annalise? Okay, I'm just gonna read this verbatim, so if that sounds boring, just skip a little to when I talk about the first chapter. When Fernanda, Annalise, and their friends from the Delta Bilingual Academy convene after school, Annalise leads them in a thrilling but increasingly dangerous rituals to a rhinestone, Dior-scented drag queen god of her own invention. That's quite a sentence. Even more perilous is the secret Annalise and Fernanda share, rooted in a dare in which violence meets love. I don't know what that means, but I'm intrigued. Meanwhile, their literature teacher, Miss Clara, who is obsessed with imitating her dead mother, struggles to preserve her deteriorating sanity. Each day she edges nearer to a total break with reality, and apparently ends up binding one of them to a deserted cabin floor. Interweaving pop culture references and horror concepts drawn from Herman Melville, H.P. Lovecraft, and anonymous creepypastas. What? Jawbone is an ominous multivocal novel that explores the terror inherent in the pure potentiality of adolescence and the fine line between desire and fear. Okay. I don't know what language this is originally published in, but it is translated by Sarah Booker, in case anyone's interested. The first sentence of chapter 1 is, "She fluttered her eyes open and enrushed all the shadows of the breaking day." That's beautiful. Okay, that chapter was 9 pages and there was a lot going on, but not actually a lot going on. We start off with the sort of point of view from Fernanda, and she is waking up and she's tied to the floor of this cabin. Well, she's not tied to the floor, she's tied up on the floor. Sorry, I'm overcomplicating things. She can see her teacher mopping up, and then there are all these thoughts going on in her head, and it's not technically stream of conscious, but she's going from one thought to the other. She's thinking about touching herself to lines from a Johnny Depp movie. Wow, I didn't need that. She's thinking about Twiggy and pretending that she is her. She's thinking about different classes and different poems that she's read in these classes. She's thinking about her therapist. She's just thinking a lot, and she's saying some mean things about her teacher, which is sort of warranted because she's kidnapped her, so I'm not going to say anything about her calling her an uber whore or a stupid bloody ass bitch. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but it's not as slow as I thought it was going to be, and it did make me want to immediately start chapter 2 because the last sentence of chapter 1 is,
"You and I are going to talk about what you did."
So I'm thinking maybe it's sort of like a story like this. Maybe Fernanda is a mean girl. She's like an Alison De Laurentiis type of villain.
I know you want to kiss me.
Maybe she deserves to be tied up on the floor of a cabin. I don't think so because she's a child, but we shall see. As for now, I think my intrigue level is Black Sheep, then Death Valley, then Jawbone, then Dreambound, if you're keeping track. All right, next is Monstrilio. Like I said, this is a 5-star prediction, which is a little scary and intimidating because if my expectations are that high, there's a great possibility of disappointment, but I'm gonna hope for the best. This is gonna be one of those books that I'm probably gonna cry because it's about a young boy, Santiago, who dies, and his mother, Magos, ends up carving out a piece of his lung to save for herself. Acting on a fierce maternal instinct and dubious logic of an old folktale, she nurtures the lung until it gains sentience, and it turns into the carnivorous little Monstrilio that she keeps hidden within the walls of her decaying childhood home in Mexico City. Eventually, Monstrilio begins to resemble Santiago, but despite his family's best efforts to turn the monster they created into a man, Monstrilio's innate impulses threaten to destroy his fragile second chance at life. Oh, this is gonna kill me. I feel like I'm going to grow to absolutely love Monstrilio, and I don't think it's gonna end well. I'm gonna be quite frank. It doesn't even start well because Santiago is dead. The first sentence, her son dies in a child-sized bed, big enough for him, but barely enough to hold her and her husband, who cling to the edges, folding themselves small so they fit one on each side of him. That is awful. Oh my god. Okay, chapter 1 was 6 pages, and I felt the urge to cry because these parents are devastated that their son is dead, obviously. I knew from the synopsis, as I just read, that the mother carves out a piece of his lung to save for herself, but I didn't imagine the process of which she had to do that, and we get it in great detail here of her, oh my god, cutting into and getting the piece of lung out of her son's chest. Wow. And just some of the imagery, like this mother, she saw a play once where a woman coated her hands in blood and licked it because the blood was hers, because it was her son's blood. And so she starts licking the blood. And it sounds disgusting, but it's actually the most heart-wrenching thing I've ever read. So yeah, this is gonna be fucking intense. And it's gonna be, I think, beautiful and sad and creepy. And that is all I want in a book. This is at the top now. Okay, next is Never Whistle at Night. This is an anthology. A bunch of different authors have given us stories of dark fiction, but it's all indigenous authors and indigenous stories. What really gravitated me toward this is not on the back of the book, but it was in the Goodreads description, so I'll just explain it to you. I'm pretty sure it said that a Hawaiian native story was about how whistling at night was very unlucky and it could cause like an old ancient warrior to come to you. And ever since reading that, because I live in Hawaii, I whistle a lot. Like, whistling is my number one probably annoying trait to some people. My husband doesn't even notice it anymore. Do you notice me whistling?
Yeah.
Is it annoying?
No.
Okay, well, he still notices it, but he says it's not annoying. Thank you.
You gotta pay me for my comments at least.
Oh, I'm gonna edit them out. So ever since I read the synopsis, I've paused before I started whistling at night. It's already haunted me. This isn't really fair to include this in a first chapter, try a chapter video because each of these authors are different. So if I don't like the first story, it has nothing to do with the rest of the stories. But I really wanna start this because it's just been sitting on my shelves for like a week. And I'm getting impatient. I'm just gonna read the first story. I'm gonna save the foreword by Stephen Graham Jones for later, but this story is called Kushtuka by Matilda Zeller. And Matilda is the first generation of her family to grow up outside of Kubuk River Valley, but feels strongly about preserving and carrying on the stories from that region. The first sentence of Kushtuka is, "You don't have to love him, just make his baby," Mama said, hanging the fleshy swath of salmon to dry. Oh, Jesus. I was not expecting that. All right, I finished it. It was bloody and gory and creepy. The only thing about horror short stories, especially in an anthology where usually the author, I don't know about Matilda Zeller, I'm gonna look her up in a second. Usually they make novels or full-length pieces of fiction, and so because they're writing a short story, obviously there's so much more that could be done with it, and all I'm yearning for the entire time I'm reading the short story, even though it gets to the action quickly and it wraps up very quickly, I'm wishing for a full-length novel, and I really, really would love to read this story and these characters because I got pretty attached pretty quickly. Our main character's name is Tepisa in the story, and her mother wants her to hook up with this white guy and have his babies, but he sounds like an old creep. The guy that she really wants to marry, though, he is taking the white creep's son out hunting, and the mother has volunteered Tepisa to be like a cater waiter for this white guy and his white friends for a white party. Sorry. Anyway, she's telling this older white guy this native story because he's requesting it of her because he paid for her for that night. Ew. And so she starts telling him about Kushtuka, which is the title of the story. Kushtuka, they appear to us taking on the appearances of those we love. They try to get with us to go with them. And then a bunch of shit happens that I won't tell you about because I don't want to give away the entire story. But it got gory and yeah, it was creepy. Ooh, this is one of the books that Matilda Zeller has, The Revenge of Bridget Cleary. This cover is amazing. Yeah, sounds pretty intriguing. I'm gonna add it to my TBR. I think this will definitely be a short story collection I want to read this month when I'm in that Halloween mood, because as much as I am like kind of dying for these stories to be more fleshed out, they get to the punch really quick and it seems like it's gonna be really bloody and lovely. So yeah. Okay, next is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This cover is beautiful. It's got like golden edges. I've seen this everywhere. I was FOMO'd to buy it. Can that be used as a verb? I don't know. That's what we're gonna do today. That being said though, I have no idea what it's about, okay? Elspeth needs a monster. The monster might be her. Elspeth needs more than luck to stay safe in the eerie, mist-locked kingdom of Blunder. She needs a monster. She calls him the Nightmare, an ancient, why am I smiling? An ancient mercurial spirit trapped in her head. He protects her. He keeps her secrets. Oh, why is that the sweetest thing I've ever heard? But nothing comes for free, especially magic. Okay, this is sounding so good. Elspeth is a very difficult name to say, by the way. When Elspeth meets a mysterious highwayman on the forest road, her life takes a drastic turn. Thrust into the world of shadow and deception, she joins a dangerous quest to cure Blunder of the dark magic infecting it. Except the highwayman just so happens to be the king's own nephew, captain of the most dangerous men in Blunder, and guilty of high treason. I'm sure they're gonna fall in love. It's a lush, gothic fantasy debut novel. Ooh. Let's read the first sentence. This is dedicated to the quiet girls with stories in their heads, to their dreams and their nightmares. Okay, chapter 1 has this like epitaph. Is that correct? Am I using that word correctly? The infection comes as a fever in the night. If you take ill, watch the veins, the tributary of blood, I don't know what that word is, traveling down the arms. If they remain as they ever did, you have nothing to fear. If the blood darkens to an inky black, the infection has taken hold. The first sentence is, I was 9 the first time the physicians came to the house. Okay, let's go. I gasp at literally everything, I'm sorry. Also, LOL, the author pictures like the entire front flap of the cover. Interesting choice. All right, this was 16 pages, chapter 1, and we follow Elspeth as she was a child. In this fantasy world, there is a disease or a sickness that overcomes someone and it makes your veins like black. And I think when this happens, these people are hunted down. I don't know if they're killed or maybe they are put somewhere. I'm not sure, but it seems like it's going to be one of those situations where the government is possibly executing these people because with this sickness comes magic. Our main character, I think her mother like threw her out of the house and made her run into the woods when these people came to get her. And so no one ever found out that she had this sickness except obviously her family. And she was raised by her aunt and uncle. Once the fever passed, she didn't have any magical abilities. At least no one could see that she did. So she was kind of in the clear. In the present day, we find out her mother is no longer in the picture. I don't know if she died. It's kind of seeming that way. She still lives with her aunt and uncle. I think she's 20 years old now. And she has this nightmare. It's another voice in her head, and I am such a simp for a dual consciousness. I blame Stephanie Meyer and the host, and I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where this voice is an actual person and it's probably going to be her love interest. We shall see. But there's a lot of family drama going on. She goes to her father's house once a year for her namesake day. I'm guessing that's like her birthday, and things are really strained between this family. It's her stepmother and her 2 stepsisters, so it's kind of fairy tale-y. And she does have a sort of magic, and I'm very confused about it. It wasn't very much explained, but we're only 1 chapter in. And it's sort of like tarot cards. I don't understand if she sees them in her head or they're literally out and about. I'm so confused about that. She ends up leaving this dinner before they even eat, and she just bails on her friend. So that was kind of weird and abrupt. But I am curious about this dual consciousness and this sickness and the magic, but I'm also a little confused, which, you know, is par for the course for a fantasy novel. Next is Out on a Limb. I'm so excited for this one. This has a 4.43 on Goodreads, and people just rave and rave about it. So I'm expecting probably a 4-star. I've only given like 1 5-star for a romance, and I did it last month. You can go check out this video. I believe this is an accidental pregnancy second chance romance, which many people don't enjoy, but apparently even the people who hate those tropes love this book, which is very promising. Winifred Wynne McCulty has always been wildly independent, not one to be coddled for her limb difference. Wynne has spent most of her life trying to prove that she can do it all on her own, and with some minor adjustments, she's done just fine. That is until she has a one-night stand with the incredibly charming Beau, a perfect stranger, and then one night changes everything. She gets pregnant, I'm sure. While Beau is surprisingly elated to step up to the plate, Wynne finds herself unsure of whether she can handle this new challenge on her own or if she'll need a helping hand. Together, Wynne and Beau decide to get to know one another as friends and nothing more, but as they both should know by now, life rarely goes according to plan. So it's one night stands turned mommy and daddy to friends to lovers. Wow, what a pipeline. There's like a 3-page author's note. Let me quickly read that. Oh my gosh, apparently this author only has one hand. And the book is dedicated to her husband Ben for always being my right-hand man. That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever heard. Okay, so this is somewhat autobiographical because our author and main character have a less developed right hand. They were born with a limb difference and they both have a pregnancy. I love it when author's notes are before the book begins because I feel like I get closer to the story. I'm a simp for that. Chapter 1, first sentence. Did you know this song might be about an orgy? I asked the witch standing next to the punch bowl, pointing toward the speaker. I do remember reading this when I bought this. Okay, let me read the first chapter. Funnily enough, this is taking place at a Halloween costume party, which is very October of them. Thank you, that made me happy. Our main character is dressed as a pirate with a hook, and she is talking about her friend. We meet a couple characters, and then she has this sort of quick banter with another pirate, some really hot dude, and so they're arguing about how one of them has to change because they each want to win this costume party, and she takes off her hook and shows him her hand and is like, well, I think I win because I need this hook. And then he smirks and then he shows her his leg. That's when the chapter ends. We know he has a prosthetic because we've seen this picture. So yeah, that's cute. I feel like romance is one of the least satisfying first chapters to read for like a tri-chapter thing because you don't get into the crux of the drama, at least most of the time in the first chapter, especially if it's going to be like a sweet romance. So I'm not like dying to go on to chapter 2, but this seems like it's going to be a fun read. I also just love this cover. I think it's so pretty. Next we have The Will of the Many, and I think this is the one I'm most excited to read. Maybe excited is the wrong word. I'm most intrigued because this is a high fantasy book with a complicated, I'm guessing, at least for me, fantasy concept where willpower is an actual power and it can be traded. It seems like it's going to be very political, at least as a sort of class system where the lower class has to give their willpower to the upper class, and that's probably going to be fought against. There's probably going to be a war. It says book 1, so there's going to be multiple books in this series. It's probably going to get crazier and more complicated, so I better dive in as soon as possible. Our main character's first name is Vice. I'm going to say Vice because that sounds cool. It's V-I-S. Oh my god, this text is tiny. Look at that shit. Vice apparently is a young fugitive who uncovers layered mysteries and world-changing secrets at an elite Catanan academy. So there's like a boarding school situation going on. Vice has been orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and he tells people this is the good fortune that has led him to the acceptance of this school. Good fortune? That's a joke. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society in allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus, what they call will, to be leached away and added to the power of those above me, as millions already do, as all must eventually do. I tell them that I belong and they believe me. But the truth is that I have been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart, and that I will never ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will still have to rise through the academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends and pretend to be one of them and win. Because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, your real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, then they will kill me. Okay, so he was sent to this academy. I wonder who sent him. Interesting. Okay, chapter 1, sentence 1. I am dangling. Why is that the funniest word ever? And it's only my father's blood-slicked grip around my wrists that stops me from falling. I trust him to save me. He lets go. Okay, that was 16 pages, but because the pages are so big and the text is so small, it felt like a lot longer than that, but I am very intrigued. Our main character, Vice, I can't tell if that's his name because he's alluded that he has another name, but also because it seems that each of the characters' first name is like a title. And before the book starts, there's like a ranking with different titles in it. It's all very confusing. I'm sure I'll understand more as I read it, but Vice, our main character, is working in a prison. He feeds the prisoners and washes them. Apparently they are stuck on this slab of, like, I was picturing marble. Apparently it's called a sapper, and it takes all of the will out of these prisoners. I guess just the people of this world, they give their will away. Again, I don't understand it, but the prisoners, they're completely like mummified. They can't talk, they don't understand what's happening, they're in this sort of semi-conscious state, and if they're touching this slab, the life is just being sucked out of them. This dude comes in and he requests to see a prisoner, and so Vice goes and takes him down there. He's evading some conversation, and apparently the more you work at this place, the more your mind kind of leaves you, because just being exposed to the sappers, those slabs that suck the juice out of the people, sorry, it can slowly start to suck the life out of you just being in the vicinity, except our main character Vice has been there for a while and there has been no sapping of his life juice. So there's something special going on with Vice, and he even accidentally touches the slab or the sapper, whatever the fuck it's called, at one point, but nothing happens. So that's interesting. The only tiny glimpse we get of the true identity of Vice is my father was passionate in his belief of the importance of a history uncolored by hierarchy translators. My mother was a scholar, fluent in 3 languages herself, and I was groomed by both of them and my tutors for 14 years to be a diplomat to support my sister in her eventual rule by traveling to other nations. So it sounds like his sister was supposed to be this big wig, and he is actually a very upper class person, but for whatever reason right now, he's orphaned and pretending to be a serf or what have you. So I'm intrigued about this family. I'm intrigued by this willpower. That's the thing I really am just wanting to know more about. But also, we know that this takes place at an academy. So how does he end up at this academy? And I just can't wait for a boarding school setting. I'm such a simp for that. So this is pretty high up on the anticipation list, although the actual cover of this book smells rancid. I don't know what it is. Last but not least, I have The Worst Best Man. Again, I have no idea why I ended up buying this. Obviously, there's gonna be a sort of wedding. I don't always love weddings in books. I don't know why. Although my last and only 5-star romance, there were weddings all around it. Our main character was a wedding planner. So there's hope for me yet. A wedding planner left at the altar? Yeah, the irony isn't lost on Carolina Santos either, but despite that embarrassing blip from her past, Lena's offered an opportunity that could change her life. There's just one hitch. She has to collaborate with her best, make that worst man from her own failed nuptials. Marketing expert Max Hartley is determined to make his mark with a coveted hotel client looking to expand its brand. But then he learns that he'll be working with his brother's whip-smart, stunning, absolutely off-limits ex-fiancée, and she loathes him. If they can nail their presentation without killing each other, they'll both come out ahead. Except Max has been public enemy number 1 ever since he encouraged his brother to jilt the bride, and Lena's ready to dish out a little payback of her own. See, that's an actual enemies situation that I totally believe. Soon, Lena and Max discover animosity may not be the only emotion creating sparks between them. Still, the star-crossed couple can never be more than temporary playmates because Lena isn't interested in falling in love, and Max refuses to play runner-up to his brother ever again. Well, newsflash, they're gonna fall in love. The first sentence takes place 3 years ago, and it's through the dude's point of view. My phone's text tone chirps like a robin, which fails to prepare me for the clusterfuck on the screen. Okay, so we're going back to when this wedding was ruined. Let's go. All right, I read the first 9 pages, which were technically the prologue, but it was juicy and good, so whatever. It's 3 years prior. The groom ends up texting his brother, our main dude, and says, everything you said last night made sense, Em. Thanks to you, I can see the truth now. I can't marry Lena. Need you to break the news. Don't worry, she'll handle it with class. Going to disappear for a few days while I get my head straight. Tell mom and dad I'll call them soon. How fucking... Can you imagine having to tell this woman that you don't know that your brother is not gonna marry her? How... Anyway, he ends up telling her and she's upset, clearly. But we get an insight to her that they weren't really in love, although she probably doesn't realize this. It was just a sort of mutual friendship, just a symbiotic, transactional sort of thing. So I'm sure this guy ended up doing her a favor, but I hope they don't bring him up. I think it has to come up at some point though, because the main character is brothers with him. Obviously, he's not the right man for her. So I hope it's not going to be a forced love triangle in that way, because it's so clear that he's not even an option, a viable option. No, 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 no. Plus, what kind of self-respecting person would ever take someone back that left them in that way? That would be awful. In these situations where it's enemies to lovers and there have been a number of years between this confrontation and today's events, I am anticipating them seeing each other again. Like, that has me wanting to read the next couple chapters. So that's exciting, and I think it was written well. So this could be a win for me. All right, we have come to a close. I have read 10 new chapters of 10 new books, and I'm so excited. I think the ones at the top of my need to read now are Never Whistle at Night, just because it's got that Halloween energy, and I could just read a couple of these every day, and that'll be really fun. But my top 3 is definitely Monstrilio, Black Sheep, and Death Valley. I feel like these 2 specifically are gonna have that fantastical element, but it's going to absolutely drain my emotions in the best way. It's gonna make me just think about how sad life is. Don't you just love that? And then this one's just gonna be, is this girl a witch or not sort of vibes. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I do wanna make this more of an occurrence. I used to think it was bad when I did this because it was me starting another bunch of books that I am probably not gonna finish for a year. But on the contrary, it gets me that much closer, or at least wanting to finish the book, even if I don't end up finishing it for a year. It kind of takes out the intimidation of a brand new book. So that's really fun. Also, LOL, I got 3, what the fuck? Babe, there's something in this book. I was just gonna say that I got 3 new books in the mail. I got Last to Leave the Room, What We Kept to Ourselves, and Let Him In. I was holding this and there was something in the cover. I thought it was a bug, so I freaked out, but it's a weird envelope. What is this? I'm gonna open it. What is this? What the fuck? They're like things for soldering. I think this was just an Amazon mistake, but I'm going to use this moment to be creeped out and think that this is like some bigger meaning, like a haunted spirit gave me soldering tips. What a plot twist. This is just a menacing sound. Pray for me. I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.